everyone. What is the idea of week 9? We're looking at two, I would say, extremely interesting BER cases, 10-5 and 97-12. I would say, looking looking over them quickly, that 10-5 is really a first canon case, and 97-12 is a fourth canon case. But the relationship between the first and fourth canons is so close that I suppose that it's almost always possible to construe a first canon case as a fourth canon case. Although I don't think it goes the other way around, and I'll tell you what I mean. I mean 10-5 about the engineer who observes a possible safety hazard in an adjoining work site with which they have no professional connection is really about the limits of the first canon. That is, first canon says that engineers need to hold paramount the health, safety, and welfare of the public, which would seem to point towards the engineer in this case having responsibilities because they see something that's possibly a danger to the public. But the case is interesting because it is an attempt on the part of the BER to draw a limit. And that limit is the limits of the individual engineer's responsibility to the public. And I don't know if it's correct. But it is an extremely interesting attempt to draw that line and to say that if that line needs to be drawn somewhere, otherwise you have an unreasonable burden on the engineer where they could be responsible for everything that they observe, and that's one way of putting it. I mean, we just watched the video, I'm sure, that discuss it. But even in that case, there is the detail that the engineer is supposed to inform their client or employer of the situation. So doesn't seem to be directly any kind of fourth canon issue, but even there, they do say that the only responsibility the engineer really has is to inform. I can't remember if it's the client, the employer, or both. I think it's both. But the client at the very least. Whereas 97-12 is a fourth canon case, and it doesn't seem to have anything to do with public safety, and that's one of the reasons that they decide it the way that they do. The engineer who calls the hotline when they observe that the terms of a contract for a CAD workstation being violated by the employer. An extremely interesting case, I would say, and very questionable. There's nothing obviously wrong about the decision, but I would say it's questionable. Extremely interesting case having to do with the fourth canon and the limits, I suppose, of what an engineer can legitimately expect an employer to do. It is very important to this case that there is no first canon issue on the surface. That is, there's no danger to the welfare of the public in any kind of obvious sense. But there is possible wrongdoing by an employer. And then what does an engineer do in a situation where they do think some serious wrongdoing has occurred, or at least some wrongdoing? I guess whether it's serious is a judgment call. But it doesn't affect the public in any obvious way. What are the engineers' responsibilities, and what are what is morally permissible? As you'll see, that case really calls the engineer to task. It says outright that they're unethical when they call that hotline. I don't know. That's something you'll have to decide for yourself. So really, we're looking at two, I would say, this week, very fascinating cases. One, just pretty much a first canon case, 10-5, and the other, 97-12, is really a fourth canon case.